If the January joint railroad committees could come to order, please. We will begin with a safety announcement.
Your safety is of foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen to the following instructions. In the event of an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and 911 should be called. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell D down the hallway past the elevators. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the gentleman sitting to the right of our Long Island president. This is our new Chief Operating Officer, Mario Peluquin. Welcome. We're glad that you're interested in what we're up to. The summary of actions is in your book. There is one addition, which is a procurement for Long Island Railroad, which was available at sign-in, and all the board members have already received. Anything else? No? Okay. There is also a joint venture for construction and development. With nothing else, we'll start with, are there any public comments?
Good morning, Madam Chair. We have 7 public speakers today. In the interest of time and fairness, we ask them all to adhere to the 2-minute limit. The first speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Good morning, MTA board. This is Jason Anthony. Started the new year with a new legal name. First of all, I want to speak regarding the Long Island Railroad service on the weekends during sporting events. It has been a complete disaster. No service has been provided for Islanders games, especially when they are celebrated in Brooklyn. There has to be another alternative when service is suspended on the main line. And other than that, we hope that service gets improved on Long Island and on Metro North, and that we could get to the 100% mark at the end of the year. And we hope that by this year, we could expand the Atlantic ticket usage to Penn Station late nights and weekends, because we know that the subway has service changes during those periods, so it should be grateful to have more alternative service to go to and from Manhattan. So that's all I have to say for this month.
Our next speaker is Charlton D'Souza, followed by Bruce Hain.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the Executive Director of Passengers United. I always see you guys in the videos every month. I watch the videos. I'm here today because I'm concerned about what's going on the main line for the Long Island Railroad. The lack of shuttle buses has been a very big issue, and I've spoken to President Eng and the board members many times about this. And I will speak to you guys offline, but we do need shuttle buses, not run by Nice Bus, but the MTA should be providing the shuttle buses because Nice Bus constantly breaks down. Also, I want to talk about the Hollis, Long Island Railroad Station in Queens. I was told that it's being taken off the capital programs list. I hope my facts are wrong. Hopefully you guys can correct me, and I hope that station is going to be in the capital program because it's one of the worst stations in the Long Island Railroad, along with East New York and Hunters Point Avenue, and also with Atlantic ticket. This weekend, there's going to be no train service to Atlantic Terminal Brooklyn. So is there any way that they can cross on Atlantic tickets at Penn Station? I know you guys have done it before when I brought the issue up at the meeting. We really need Atlantic ticket to Penn this weekend so that customers are not, they don't suffer any inconvenience. And also with the vending machines at Queens Village, the vending machines are constantly breaking down. You'll need to put a new machine at the other end of the station. And also we need more MTA police at Queens Village. Overnight, there's people smoking marijuana inside the the Hempstead platform, and they're selling drugs in there. That needs to be resolved. And also, when people are getting off the trains, there's been a lot of robberies over there. So you guys need to work with the 105th Precinct and work that out. Thank you so much.
Our
And
next-
also with Empire City Casino, just real quick, Metro North, you'll need to improve the lighting over there in that station by Mount Vernon West. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Our next speaker is Bruce Hain, followed by Matt Camper.
Morning. The $800 million Rockaway Beach Branch study contains big errors and also errors of geometry. That's not 4 degrees of curve at White Pot Junction. It's 1,375 feet of radius. You'd have to replace the bridge at 62nd Road, the one that's empty now, with that alignment. They fudged it by moving the track over, which I guess they kind of thought was funny. But that wouldn't matter anyway. You'd have to replace the bridge. You can't have an alignment like that. You can't build a subway there. And that's important because a lot of people think that you can because of this study. Well, you can't do it with that alignment. There is one giant 8-story apartment building and 8 others, some 7, some 6 stories, that your study would take out. I had to draw it out. I stacked the tracks in a 250-foot radius curve to get around the 8-story building, assuming 60-foot cars. Why wasn't that in the study? The Pennsylvania Railroad thought enough of that line's potential to build this great canyon of a grade-separated connection at Rego Park. And that was before Kennedy Airport was even thought of. 25 minutes to the airport. I'd like to see a 4-track connection at White Pot. It's easily possible. They probably foresaw it. That's the only way to do it if you're going to have service to the airport. You'd have to have a more robust 10-foot wide Innovia. The centers of the cars would be just about exactly 3 feet farther from the platform than at the ends. On that 1,375-foot curve, I'd say that's not significant. We sorely need something like Innovia. You know, you don't need a wheel wear with Innovia. You don't have all this wheel wear business. Oh dear. I hate to sound critical, but concerning the Rockaway Beach Branch, you are going to have to exercise your fiduciary responsibility and stewardship with this property.
Can you conclude your remarks, sir, please?
Well, am I making it clear?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Matt Camper, followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning, joint Metro North LIRR committee. My name is Matt Camper, fellow LIRR rider, and also part of Passengers United. I'm here this morning because the main line of the LIRR when it comes to the shuttle buses, it really needs to come back. One of my fellow colleagues in the past has said that people have utilized the shuttle buses in the past, back in 2017, when, for example, the Post Avenue Bridge was replaced in Westbury. And it's just, I feel, when it comes to the shuttle trains, I understand you want to do it. Okay, you know, I get it. But when it comes to the connections, I took the train on Saturday because I had to go to the city with my dad. And we were, I think, about, it was a couple of Saturdays ago, actually, like 5 to 10 minutes late. And it was all because of that connection with the shuttle train at Babylon. And there's a lot of trains that are late, all because of congestion at Babylon. So I feel that the trains, if you're going to provide extra service on the Babylon branch, it needs to be more spread out, let's say every 15 minutes. So that way, at least it gives a little leeway in case a connection is running late with the shuttle train and it doesn't cause, you know, backups and congestion and stuff like that. And another thing is, one of my colleagues has said in the past that Hicksville, Mineola has had a lot when it comes to things such as homelessness problems and vagrancy and panhandling. We feel, I understand Babylon has gotten better. Why doesn't the MTA police come over to Hicksville and Mineola and look into this situation because it's getting worse by the day. And a lot of people on the main line are going to start fleeing those stations and just going to other stations because they can't deal with it. And it needs to be addressed as soon as possible because it's just getting out of control, and a lot of people have been complaining about it. So that's my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Murray Bowden, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning. I'm going to speak about the President's report on Metro North this morning, but since it hasn't been published, I can only guess what it would say. We've done all these nice things, we've met people, and we've outreach. I've asked 3 questions, none of which have been answered. One, I've given each of you a train whistle so that you can listen to it. I've asked numerous times why they blow the train whistle at 125th Street, and I've gotten no answer. So when they tell you we're taking care of customers' complaints, they're lying to you through their teeth. I've asked why there are red lights and traffic lights in Danbury at the same place. The red flashing lights were there 75 years ago before there were traffic lights. I get no answer. So when they tell you we're listening to customers, they're bull-pooping you. I have to be careful of the words I say. I've been asked about that. I can't. There was a third one as well. I'll get it in a minute. On Long Island, there are 6 crossings with horns. So when you're in Long Island and you hear a horn from a train, you don't know which of the 6 crossings you're going to be at. They very well could put the horn right at the gate instead of from a train. They've been annoying people at stations forever for no reason, and they will not stop. It is this committee's responsibility. Good morning, Neil. I know you can. I know. I read the sign out there this morning. You have no right to stop me, and you go read. No.
Can you please conclude your remarks,
I
sir?
read what it says out there. You are out of order. You want me to follow the rules? Then you follow the rules. I took a picture of it this morning, and I noticed the change in the wording. You are wrong.
Sir, can you please conclude your remarks?
No, you have no right to say what you just did. And that's what's going on here. People who've been around here so long think they know the answers. The rules changed. He's not aware of the rules changing. You're not aware of the rules changing. I am. You demand I follow the rules. I demand you follow the rules.
Thank you, sir.
The rule out there says I can speak. Is suggested. You cannot stop me, and you need to read the rules. You want me to read the rules? I want you to read the rules.
Okay.
All right, Murray,
Thank
we've
you.
got it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Murray.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stop me. You cannot interrupt me. You're wrong, and I'm right this time. And what's going on here is people like you who've been doing this for so long, you think you know the rules? I read the rules. I gotta follow them. You gotta follow them.
Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Yuki Endo.
Good morning. Murray's always a tough act to follow. Lisa Daglian, I'm the executive director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, or PCAC. Happy New Year to everybody. Oren is not here today, so I'm sort of feeling him and filling in for him. I wanted to say to both Kathy and Phil, congratulations on your improving statistics. Now, channeling Oren for real, we just need to see those same improvements on west of Hudson, and we appreciate the fact that you're taking that hard tack with NJT, and if there's anything that we can do to support that more publicly, please let us know. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Yuki Endo.
and then thank you and then President for and for coming to Long Island for the meeting in Makase in December. I am asking for the shuttle bus for the 9 line on a Saturday because the cyclists cleaning won't be able to take a day of bikes on the nice bus N22 N24 N41 buses. I am and also asking both president during the 9 line suspension and then take the riding tour on the N22 N25 buses between Minneota and Hicks to say how the nice bus riders feel about the bus service. And the 9 line construction should have been suspended when there was a crew about riding even at the Madison Square Garden. And then also why the Minneota ticket is now closed on the N41 bus at the Freeport station also. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes our public speakers for today.
Thank you, Mr. Gans. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of December's meeting? Second. Those in favor? Minutes are approved. This is also the meeting where we approve our work plan. Kathy?
The 2020 work plan has been prepared for the Metro North and Long Island Railroad Committee's final review and approval. There have been no changes to the proposed 2020 work plan presented at last month's joint committee meeting, and the work plan is based upon reports that both railroads provided last year and changes that Phil highlighted at last month's committee meeting with respect to reports that will no longer be prepared.
I move that we approve the work plan for both Metro North and Long Island Railroad. Is there a second? Those in favor? Both work plans are approved. Thank you.
Okay.
President's report.
Great, thank you. While safety is always Metro North's top priority, I'm happy to report significant and improved train performance in 2019, thanks largely in part to progress under our Way Ahead plan. On-time performance climbed to a 6-year high of 94.4%, which is an increase of 4.3 percentage points over the year before. It's a culmination of 13 consecutive months of improved OTP, during which we operated more trains than in 2018. I also note that we had a 100% day yesterday, which is a rare thing, so I did want to sort of, pause on that for a second. We couldn't do any of this without the dedication and commitment of our workforce, who rise to the challenge every day. But this is an effort that starts at the top. So it's the people that you see here every month, but also the 6,000 people that you don't see. So I want to thank all of them for all of their work in terms of improving our performance. Last year, we recorded 55% fewer train cancellations and terminations. 41% fewer trains were delayed more than 15 minutes, and we had 63% fewer trains operating with fewer cars than normal. Our trains also traveled 64% more miles before causing a train delay, which is a huge improvement over 2018 and a record high for train reliability. We've made great strides since unveiling Way Ahead in October of 2018. This program concentrated our resources on enhancing safety, service, and infrastructure, along with improving customer communication. Speaking about safety for a moment, Metro North is on track to meet the December 2020 deadline for installation of PTC. Thanks to work completed in 2019, PTC now covers the Hudson Line from Marble Hill to Poughkeepsie, the Harlem Line from Southeast to Wassaic, and the entire Danbury branch within the state of Connecticut. Today, 41% of our trains are operating daily in full PTC mode. In addition to the PTC project update on today's agenda, I want to highlight the following milestones. We expect to be an extended revenue service demonstration on the Harlem Line between Mount Vernon West and Southeast by next Saturday, next weekend. Following that, ERSD will be extended to include the remainder of the Harlem and Hudson lines in the month of February, and at that time, all Harlem and Hudson trains will be operating in full PTC mode for their entire journeys. Also, by the end of February, all Hudson and Harlem line trains will have network connectivity, providing the ability to remotely upload radio frequency files, which will save time and effort with respect to PTC installations. Initial testing of M8 hardware required to support PTC operations on the M8s on the New Haven line is currently scheduled for the end of February, and software testing will begin in the month of March. Finally, with respect to the interoperability requirement of the PTC mandate, the second of 4 Amtrak boundaries at Spuyten Duyvil is scheduled to be completed by March. Poughkeepsie is done, and then we have to turn to New Haven and New Rochelle, which will be done by the end of this year. Meanwhile, our M&W crews continue to focus on bringing our infrastructure to a state of good repair. Through our Smart Track program, which is part of Way Ahead, crews are undertaking critical infrastructure work by strategically shutting down continuous segments of track, giving multiple work groups uninterrupted access to maintain and improve our system. There's an information item in your books today, the quarterly track program update, and it's set forth in that report that our crews were hard at work last year and installed more than 50,000 new cross ties, 28 new switches, and more than 8 miles of new continuously welded rail. We also surfaced almost 111 miles of track, replaced 5 railroad crossings, renewed the components of the Cos-Cob movable bridge in Connecticut, and installed 1,800 feet of fencing along our tracks. And as part of that, we removed 90 tons of debris and garbage from our right-of-way. Underway ahead, we also continue to bring real improvements to many of our stations and enhance the customer experience. We completed station improvements at Harlem 125th Street, Riverdale, and Portchester stations last year, and we continue to make good progress at Crestwood and White Plains. The Crestwood overpass is now finished, and our focus now is on a new kiss and ride entrance canopy, plaza, and ADA ramp, which will open this winter. At White Plains, we have delivered a new waiting area with floor-to-ceiling glass, improved HVAC, benches and digital information signs, new bathrooms, and a new space for our vendor Tim Hortons, as well as a new ticket office. The waiting area is 23% larger than the former space and a significant improvement for our customers. By May, we will complete this expanded waiting area by adding an additional 95 linear feet of improved space, bringing the total area to the length of almost 2 football fields. The new waiting room will be 645 linear feet. The side platform is in the process of being replaced and will include a new radiant heat snowmelt system, new canopy, elevator, and benches, along with digital information displays and a new art glass railing overlooking Hamilton Avenue. Additionally, both platforms will be extended to the north by 2 car lengths to increase the capacity of the station. Finally, the lobby at White Plains will undergo renovations, including a new information and ticketing dashboard, new wood ceilings, glass walls and entrance, and new flooring, new concession space for the newsstand, and a large mosaic artwork. We expect White Plains to be completed on time in December and on budget. Also this year, look for work to start on a new shelter at Nanuet, west of Hudson, a new high-level platform at Port Jervis, also west of Hudson, and new elevators at Scarsdale, Hartsdale, and Purdy stations to improve accessibility. There was also recently an announcement that Wakefield, Woodlawn, and Williamsbridge stations in the Bronx will be made accessible as part of the 20 to 24 capital program. All of these improvements are underway, and we saw a slight increase in ridership last year of 86.6 million, and a record-setting year for the Hudson line of 17.4 million rides, which is 220,000 more than 2018. We're off to a good start this year with New Year's Eve ridership increased 9.4% across all 3 lines compared to 2018, carrying 34,023 riders into the city. Last year, we continued our customer outreach with 14 Connect With Us forums where senior management are available in person for conversations with customers at stations. Last week, we held our first Connect With Us at Stamford Station in Connecticut, which is our second busiest station. In 2019, we connected with more than 110,000 people through our Rail Safety Awareness Program TRACS, which was founded in 2016. In closing, in 2020, we fully intend to build upon the momentum from 2019 as we have plenty more work to do, and we will not rest as our progress through the new capital program and continue to build our infrastructure. In closing, I want to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our entire workforce and thank our customers and stakeholders for their support and their patience as we continue to move forward. Thank you very much.
Questions on this great report? Neil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have two comments and a question. The first comment is, yes, congratulations on on-time performance. Just you can feel the difference between 85% and 92% on the lines. I would remind you, though, and it's my job, as I like to quote Carl Schurz, America, when right to be kept right, and when wrong to be put right. So that puts me in the camp of continuous improvement also. AM peak, certainly for the Hudson Line, was below our goal, right? So it was 91.8 for the year. So we're not hitting our goal there yet, and that is, as I've said many times, that is the moment of truth. So just a reminder, but the improvement over the year before at 85.9 is material, and you can feel it. Even though it's a few percentage points, you noted. The second thing I'd want to mention is I love the White Plains, North White Plains improvements are gorgeous. Crestwood also. I look forward in the next capital plan to the same magic that you bring to Putnam County, which pays twice as much and has half the quality. So we'd like to see those who are paying the most getting something in this next capital plan as we've voted on. And then lastly, my question, you mentioned PTC and 41% of the trains running. I think in PTC, and the language in the PTC status update says specifically that there were, 293 trains per day in full PTC mode. Does that mean the lines are 100% in PTC mode, or are there certain parts of the day that the trains are in PTC and other parts not?
No, all trains, in the segments that have been cut in, all trains are operating on full PTC.
And so since, Kathy, you went very fast through that part, can you just repeat one more time at a slightly slower pace?
Absolutely.
What is in full PTC
So
mode?
with respect to those lines or those segments of lines that have been cut into full PTC, all trains in operation along those segments are in full PTC. The segments. Okay, so we're in full PTC on the Hudson line from Marble Hill up to Poughkeepsie, on the Harlem line from Southeast to Wassaic, and on the Danbury branch. And on Saturday, we will be bringing in the Harlem line from Mount Vernon West all the way up to Southeast. Okay?
Other questions? I would like to thank the people of Metro North for bringing in a very good year. I also want to comment on Lisa's channeling of Orrin. We are struggling on west of Hudson, but this month at least seems like it's getting a little better. So hopefully we will be up to speed as east of Hudson is. Customer service report?
Yeah, good morning. In our efforts to enhance the customer experience for our customers, we have developed a new customer outreach program, which we have dubbed Station Talk. This program complements our Connect With Us events, except specifically our stations district managers will be greeting customers at their stations in their districts and focusing more on the individual station environment. The feedback we get will help our managers understand customers' changing needs at their home stations, as well as give us the opportunity to let customers personally know about upcoming improvements to their stations, schedule changes, and planned service changes. Our district managers have already begun this program and are expected to host one station per line per week, which will get us to about 156 Station Talk forums this year. This week, which we intend to do these every Wednesday. This week we'll be visiting 10 Mile River, New Hamburg, and Pelham. So if you have a chance, please get out there and stop and say hello to our district managers. Thank you.
Questions? No? Safety report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The safety report can be found on page 41. Customer injuries continue to trend less than 1 injury per million customers and are down over 16% versus the previous 12 months. Employee lost time injuries are down by 13% over the previous 12 months. Our TRACS program reached over 108,000 individuals through November, a 9% increase over the same time period last year. And I would like to update the committee on a recent grade crossing incident. On Saturday, January 4th, train 6861 operating on the Danbury line, struck an unoccupied vehicle that was following the track along Long Ridge Road grade crossing. The operator of the vehicle was traveling eastbound on Long Ridge Road and was making a left turn toward the local pizzeria. In doing so, he turned too far wide and found himself stuck on the tracks. And according to the vehicle operator, he then went into the pizzeria, hoping to find assistance to remove the vehicle from its stuck position. During this time, train 6861 struck the unoccupied vehicle. There were 12 passengers on board, and this resulted in no injuries. And finally, at this Thursday's Safety Committee, Lori and I will address the question regarding Grand Central Terminal and Penn Station customer injury comparison. That concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yes, Randy.
Look for compensation for the damage to our equipment.
Yeah, I mean, yes, our claims department would always do that, yes.
That's fairly routine for us at this, yeah. Any other questions of Metro North? Phil, Long Island Railroad, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to all. And as we look to a fresh start to 2020, we know there will be new opportunities for us, and it's important for us to embrace those moments. Natasha Avanesians, Long Island Railroad Chief of Staff, has accepted one of those new opportunities and a new challenge that I know she will excel in, as she did here at MTA. She joined the MTA nearly 3 years ago and has played a critical role in helping us to drive invaluable work. I've had the pleasure of working with Natasha first during my time as Chief Operating Officer at MTA, as she drove new technologies. And as I was interim transit president, she helped steer the early stages of the Subway Action Plan. And finally, in my current role as president of Long Island Railroad, here at the railroad, she proved to be up for the challenge and was instrumental in executing so many initiatives such as Long Island Railroad Forward, the push towards biometrics, time and attendance, daily operational efficiencies, improving our internal and external communications, and so much more. As an Excelsior Fellow, a 2018 City and State 40 Under 40 Rising Star, and the Railroad Chief of Staff, she will be sorely missed by all who had the opportunity to work with her. I'm deeply thankful for all her contributions, so please join me in thanking and wishing her all the best in her future endeavors. So over the course of 2019, I've cited many accomplishments, and I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to summarize them all one more time, as they truly are a reflection of the tremendous effort by our workforce and the relentless efforts by our managers and department heads as they laid out the roadmap to accomplish this critical work on time, more efficiently, while focused with a commitment to our riders. With the input and support of our labor leaders, we have demonstrated that we can deliver an unprecedented level of work that is not only improving the vitality of our infrastructure, but the experience of our riders. Adding to that challenge was a growing ridership, but I welcome that as we strive to encourage people to get out of their cars and onto mass transportation. In 2019, we exceeded 2018's record numbers by carrying an additional 1.3 million passengers for a total of 91.1 million riders. This is a new modern-day record for the railroad and once again demonstrates just how important the capital program is to not only address infrastructure needs for today's riders, but to improve our operational capacity for the future needs of Long Island and the New York metropolitan area. One might predict that with the number of track outages needed to support all the work, combined with the growing ridership, that we would experience a decline in on-time performance and customer service. I'm proud to say that we improved that, and our on-time performance was 2% greater than 2018. Overall, the on-time performance for 2019 was 92.4%. This represented over 4,500 fewer late trains, which does deliver meaningful results for our riders. And we continue working towards adding and improving safety layer on the Long Island Railroad with PTC, Positive Train Control. With many changes by the system integrator, Long Island Railroad has made significant strides towards implementation and the December 2020 deadline, with 37% of our system operating in extended revenue service demonstration. We've also showed how the railroad can be industry leaders with the implementation of the new laser technology to combat low adhesion by reducing short trains by 32% this past fall, and overall for the year, short trains were reduced by 25%, far exceeding our reduction goal of 10%. This is a particularly important metric to ensure that we have as much fleet available as our ridership continues to grow. And as I noted earlier, this has all occurred as we undertook an unprecedented amount of work, finishing up the final year of the 2015 to 2019 capital program. As we embark on a new program, it is critically important that we continue to deliver projects both on time and on budget. Working with John Lieber and our colleagues at MTA Construction and Development, it's essential to making our capital funds go further. The photo here is Accobotic Road and North Main Bridge replacements, but we've been working with the Long Island Railroad workforce, excuse me. The photo here is of Accobotic and North Main Bridge replacement, where the Long Island Railroad workforce designed and executed the project. And across the system, we are showing that we can successfully partner with both outside contractors and the construction development team. Another project, the Mainline Expansion Project, is a great example of this teamwork. While led by C&D, I'm proud of the Long Island Railroad workforce that has worked collaboratively side by side to keep this project on time and within budget. Approximately a third of the way through, we're committed to supporting them on keeping this project on time, as well as the 20 to 24 program. We've also been able to work together to improve safety and reliability with the elimination of 2 grade crossings at Covert and Urban Avenues. And for 2020, New Hyde Park Road, School Street, and Willis Avenue crossings will be addressed. Addressing 7 critical bridges across our system, improving vertical clearance, and virtually eliminating bridge hits has improved safety for our customers, our employees, but also improved safety on the road for the drivers and the communities that use them. And we've completed work at 17 stations as part of the 2019 Enhanced Station Initiative work, all accomplished on time and within the Enhanced Station Program budget. And tackling problematic switches that have caused significant delays, like Nassau Switch Replacement Project. And under Long Island Railroad Forward, we've continued to address critical maintenance and state of good repair, which has allowed us to improve reliability of our system, enhance our ability to support the outages needed for larger scale capital projects. Some of the examples included over 1,697 welded rail joints for a safer, more reliable, and comfortable commute, inspecting and upgrading 188 track circuits. And in 2018, the Long Island Railroad experienced 86 track circuit failures that have caused at least 1 delay. In 2019, there were 48, and that's a reduction of 44% that we've comfortably met our goals of, exceeded our goals of 72. We've replaced 13 high priority switches and supported PSEG as they've accelerated work along the right-of-way by replacing 138 utility poles, exceeding their original goal of 102. As I stated at the start of this, Forward is not so much a list of to-dos, but an approach and attitude of addressing issues with a sense of urgency and priority, being proactive versus reactive. We have made great progress, but we know there's a tremendous amount of work to follow with the 20 to 24 program, allowing significant and much needed investments in state of good repair. And all of this work is for the benefit of our riders and the communities that we serve, striving to provide safely, timely, and comfortable travel for our customers. For this reason, I know there's still many ways that we can innovate and deliver a truly exceptional service to our customers. Looking at 2020, we continue to build on past successes. Some of those examples were continually improving features on our real-time train tracking tool, my LIRR. To date, we have had over 326,000 unique users. Some of these new features include Find Your Train, a feature where my Long Island Railroad my LIR is able to use your location to determine which train you're on. This allows you to quickly find relevant information about your train while you're on it. Next Stops tabs. My LIR includes all stops of the trip, including special boarding and aligning instructions. There's also a Consist tab, which shows the car numbers and locations of bathrooms on the train. You can also find your train by going to the Stations tab, where you'll find a list of upcoming trains in both directions and their respective ETAs at those stations. And finally, we look at special messages, which are attached to the individual stations like Penn Station. And we're continuing to get out there and meet our customers at their home stations to address their needs and ask questions of our riders. To date, we've completed over 300 Meet Your Manager events and assisted over 3,680 customers through Long Island Railroad Care in 2019. Building on the success of the Penn Station Mama Pod, where we've had nearly 500 users, we've added a second Mama pod at Atlantic Terminal in Brooklyn, allowing our customers who need to breastfeed or pump a clean, private, relaxing environment to do so. And another way that we're improving the customer experience is by making unique partnerships, like the South Fork Commuter Connection, which is a coordinated rail and bus partnership to provide workers with a public transit operation at on the South Fork. And just last week, we announced our partnership with Molloy College, as they fully funded a 25% subsidy for its students that purchase a monthly or a 10-trip Long Island Railroad ticket. Initiatives like this are important to encouraging students to attend our great educational institutions on Long Island, but also to help encourage green transportation alternatives. We've also had extensive meetings with other partners like New York State DOT, PSEG, and National Grid about how we can best leverage our combined resources to serve Long Island. This is in addition to our constant contact with the Red Cross, local municipalities across Long Island, as we build partnerships across all levels of government. So finally, we're continuing to evaluate both our internal and external communications, ensuring that our customers are getting the timeliest real-time information and accurate service updates as possible. So as I close, it's with great excitement in the new year as we move forward with a new capital program, seeking new opportunities, new innovations to deliver critical work and service for our riders. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited about it too. You're making great progress. Questions, Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have one comment and two questions. I think the increase of ridership of $1.1 million is really incredible. And to put it in perspective, the population of Nassau and Suffolk County is about 2.8 million people, and it hovered around there in 2010, and that's where we are around now. So our population is not growing, but to have 100,000 more riders a month while the population is not growing is pretty significant. It's, I think, sending a signal that, to Long Islanders that the railroad is indeed a viable way to get to where they want to go. So hopefully that'll continue to grow and revenues will increase and our deficit will shrink. Two questions, Phil. We have fiduciary obligations. Our state controller, Tom DiNapoli, issued an audit recently and questioned the metrics of how we measure performance and on-time performance. And I read his comments and I read the railroad's comments, and I was just wondering if you could explain the discrepancy and why we believe our numbers and the methodology that we use is the correct methodology.
Well, the controller's report referenced the metric of mean distance between failure. It's a metric that we use to measure car manufacturers with regards to the requirements that we have for when they produce fleet for us, that we expect that fleet to be reliable. It's an industry-wide metric, and it's one that we have used year after year. It's one that we use to, as I said, hold the car manufacturers accountable and hold ourselves accountable to ensuring that our cars are indeed available for our customers. Where I think the misunderstanding was with what the controller's report implied was that was a metric that we've altered to improve the way our numbers look. But that is the one that we've used year after year consistently. And it's one that we, as I say, measure the manufacturers and ourselves. The metric for our customers, Kevin, is what you referenced, the on-time performance, as well as short trains. And I'm proud to say that both of those metrics have improved this year. And that's the one that our customers feel. When we have short trains, they don't have enough seats, they feel crowded. So us holding ourselves accountable to the mean distance between failure and keeping the fleet reliable is a direct relation to what the customer feels, and those metrics are different than what the controllers was referencing. So it's a valid metric. It's one that I said is industry used, and we're confident that the efforts that we're taking with regards to ensuring fleets reliable for our customers is resulting in better service for our customers, both on-time performance and a reduction in short trains.
Thanks, Phil. And then, for other recommendations that either the controller makes or, say, the IG makes, you have someone on your team that makes sure that we're monitoring the implementation of the recommendations that come out of either audits or investigations and things like that.
Absolutely. We We have a team that not only works with those entities as they're reviewing our records and making recommendations, but that same team works with all of our department heads as we implement the recommendations that we find beneficial to make our service better, to make our operations better. Absolutely, we're tracking that on a regular basis.
Great, thank you. And one last question, and I'm glad to see Jano here because maybe this is more appropriate for him. The only other issue that's come to my attention since the last time we met was that some homeowners along the third track were complaining to the media, both print and TV, that the construction noise and the rattling and the shaking was sort of untenable. And I recall that we were incentivizing our contractors to be good neighbors and to get in and out as expeditiously as possible, and they were actually incentivized to the extent they got good grades from the community. And I'm just wondering, was this a blip in what has been reported to us been really good grades so far, or was this just a one-time incident, and is the issue being corrected?
Yeah, Commissioner, what I would say is that overall the series of environmental or community commitments have been very well adhered to. I mean, we've had a great track record, and that's reflected in overall, I think, very positive feedback on those customer scorecards that are used to give the bonus. There seems to be a specific issue with the work that was taking place in the area of the Carl Place Station. What I was told is it's expected to wrap up pretty soon, and in the meantime, extra outreach efforts are being made to try to make sure people understand what's coming. And we do have an ongoing process of evaluating if there is, God forbid, any damage to people's homes or structures, so that they can have professionals come in and evaluate it, and if for some reason there is a claim to be made, there's a process for doing that. So we have that. We're anticipating the work is going to be that was creating that little extra noise is going to be wrapping up. And of course, there are sound walls everywhere. So in the long run, the sound situation from the railroad is going to be improved for everybody in the area, something that didn't exist before, a lot of sound walls.
Additional questions? In that case, could we have construction and development report, please, Jana?
There's so much good news. I really don't have a report on any project just now, but I did want to make sure that the folks knew that the Penn Station Access Project that the procurement is well underway, and we have received responses to the RFQ solicitation. Now we're moving towards the RFP. This is one of our first mega projects that's going to go forward in the era of the new capital program, and it's very exciting. We're working closely with Amtrak. I have to give Amtrak a shout out. We are having, I think, a very positive interaction and collaboration with Amtrak so far. So we'll keep the community posted, but that's a major initiative. Of course, Phil mentioned third track and other efforts that are underway, and we always thank the Long Island Railroad for continuing. I have to say it. We continue to have very successful outage weekends, as Phil said, in large part because of the Long Island Railroad forces.
I'm happy to hear about Penn Access. That really provides some underserved people with an option that they haven't had. My apologies. We have to go back to the Long Island Safety Report. Lori?
Good morning, everyone. We're reporting on our safety performance to the end of November 2019, and that report can be found on page 44 of your book. I do want to congratulate our employees in the Human Resources, the Engineering Department's Third Rail Cable Shop, the Maintenance of Equipment's Shea Yard Car Appearance Maintainers, and the Station Department's Hillside Station Appearance Maintainers. These teams were nominated by their fellow employees for exemplifying housekeeping. As many of us are aware, slips, trips, and falls are one of the greatest sources of injuries on the Long Island Railroad, housekeeping be a contributing factor to many of these events. So these employees in our second annual housekeeping contest were nominated for keeping their house in order and really serving as role models for the rest of the agency. So I want to congratulate those folks, and they were recognized by Labor and Management at our Safety Focus Day on December 17th. Our average reportable customer injury rate was 2.24 injuries per million customers, and our average reportable lost time injury rate was 3.28 injuries per 200,000 hours worked. I also want to point out that our partnership with MTA Police, our TRACS program, reached over 117,000 participants by the end of November 2019, which is almost a 9% increase over previous periods. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
No questions? In that case, could we have the police report, please, Chief?
Good morning. I am proud to report that system-wide for the year 2019, major crime is down by 8%. We had 218 crimes in 2019 versus 238 in 2018. Felony assaults are down by 26%, and very notable is that conductor assaults are down over 27%. Burglaries are down 21%, and grand larcenies, traditionally one of our biggest issues, are down by 14%. Our largest increase occurred in the category of grand larceny auto. We had an increase from 2 incidents in 2018 to 9 incidents in 2019. And as I explained last month, that occurred, reason was in District 6, we had 5 vehicles, 2 of which were gas-powered mopeds that counted as motor vehicles. Year-to-date on the Long Island Railroad, major crime is down 9%. We had 89 crimes in 2019 versus 97 in 2018. Felony assaults are down 17%. Grand larcenies, again, traditionally one of our biggest issues, are down 22%. Our largest increase on the Long Island Railroad occurred in the category of burglaries, but we had a pattern case at Deer Park Station, which was closed by arrest, that involved 3 burglaries. Year-to-date on the Metro-North Railroad, major crime is down 9%. We had 119 crimes in 2019 versus 131 in 2018. Felony assaults are down 35%, burglaries are down 59%, and grand larcenies are down 1%. I do want to take a moment to thank the men and women of the Metro-North, the MTA Police Department for a magnificent year. Not only was 2019 a record-setting year, but it's the 3rd year in a row that crime has been reduced, dropped over 29% system-wide. And that is a testament to their dedication, hard work, and vigilance. That's my report. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, Neil.
Chief, I have 2. The first is, you remind me a lot of my time at West Point, which was at lunchtime they would announce the winners of the sporting events the previous day or weekend, if it was a Monday. And they wouldn't announce them if they lost. So when I was there in the 4 years, the football team seemingly never played because they had lost every game, so they didn't announce it. So can you just talk about the one thing you didn't mention, which is on page 53? Robberies are up 31%, from 26 to 34. And I'm interested to know if there's any correlation between felony assault and robbery, because I see a strange and similar disconnect. Felony assault is down 26%, but robbery is up 31%.
The robberies, much of them became a part of original larcenies that when the victim fought back or tried to resist, turned into a robbery because of the use of force. The difference between a larceny and the robbery is the use of force in the theft.
So can you just give us some insight, because you were describing how fantastic the crime stats are, but robberies are up 31%, so that's not an insignificant rise in my humble opinion.
We are spending a lot of time with focus on our customers. Our officers have details at stations throughout the system where they hand out flyers, safeguard your stuff, be more aware of your surroundings, keep your electronics away, and that'll help us drive down the incidents going forward.
My second question is, you're going to have a material increase in staff over the course of the next few months, right? We're spending an enormous amount of money adding 500 members of the force. Some of that will be for the transit, but some of that will also be for Long Island and Metro North. What can we imagine, or what can we foresee in the future? What would the customers see in the future with this increase in the force, you think?
I believe that our customers are going to see an increased vigilance and presence on our systems. I think that'll give us the opportunity to do more outreach to our customers. We try to be proactive and look at each individual incident so we can determine the precursors to the incidents and reduce the crimes.
Randy?
Hi, Chief. The locations on the Long Island Railroad where some of our public speakers complained about people committing crimes, they're going to be looked at, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they will be.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I did notice you taking notes during the public speaking, so we appreciate it if you could look into this. We're having more commentary than we are accustomed to hearing, so I'm hoping you can deal with it.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? In which case, we'll move on to the joint item.
So the PTC progress report for both railroads is included in your materials as a information item. We've already alluded to some of the progress in our opening remarks, but if you have any additional questions.
Yes, Neil.
I have one, and for our COO, I do want to state we have a PTC working group that has been meeting inconsistently since Ronnie left. I would like to make sure that it is happening not inconsistently, but consistently. And since she was the convener of that, for our sake, I would ask that, I suspect that falls to your lap. So Mario, I look to you to reinvigorate, especially as we have at least I have 2 goals for 2020, and the first one, more impressingly, is to make sure this is implemented on time and correctly. And I think we're on track for that. But there's one comment, and the question is, and Debbie's not here, but or is she? Okay, so Debbie, if you don't mind, just, I believe in facts, not hope, and so sorry, I just unfortunately turned off my device accidentally, sorry. Page 59 is the only page that has 3 different color codings for our status. It has a previous, which was yellow. It has a current, which is yellow, but has the hope of a future projected green. It's the only one that has a projected status. Can you explain why we're giving a projected status here, whereas everything else just states the status? It's strange to me that we provide a future aspiration for a color coding.
You know, actually, I can answer that. So this is one where, after we worked with the system integrator and we re-baselined the whole schedule moving towards December 2020, we actually had considered this being a green internally. And even last month we were saying, you know, it could potentially be green because right now we are on track with the new schedule. What we decided to do is to give ourselves the benefit of the time and say, let's keep it yellow. Let's monitor for their achievements over the next month. The reason we say it's projected green is that it's borderline green, and at this point we fully expect it will become green, but we wanted to kind of make sure that we were clear that while we're keeping it yellow, we're optimistic, and everything right now is tracking towards green. So it was just a way of communicating a little differently, and we understand that maybe it added a little question to it.
I want you to have optimism for the future and pessimism for the present, because our whole goal to look at these things is to know where we really are. So I'd like you to just have a little pessimism about where we are to date, because that's going to lead to making this deadline. I know.
Yes, and we're staying on top of this because we know how critical this component is, and that's why we did not make it green.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there additional questions? We will take a hard look at PTC in the coming month. It's also, I believe, on the CPOC agenda. So if we could have a workshop meeting beforehand, it would be very helpful, and I'm sure that Neil would be happy to help you develop an agenda. Any others?
There are 2 Metro North information items. The first is the track program quarterly update. I mentioned some of the 2019 metrics in my opening report, but if you have any additional questions, Glenn Hayden is here to answer them.
Seeing no hands, the second one is,
The second one, we had punted this over from last month, which went a little bit long. It's the Metro North Origin and Destination Survey and Counts. We had wanted to sort of pause here for a little bit because this is something we do roughly every 10 years, and there's some interesting information in here. So Mike Schiffer is going to give a very quick overview and then invite whatever questions that you might have.
Good morning. Now, I'll just give a very brief perspective on this, and happy to take questions. So this comprehensive survey is undertaken every 7 to 10 years to really illustrate long-term trends of the railroad. It offers a very high-resolution snapshot of our customers and how they use the system. It involves surveying every inbound train over the course of a couple of years to understand travel patterns, demographics, access to and from stations, etc. And in addition to that, every train has on and off counts done at every station in both directions, which yields a substantial database. We are looking at automatic passenger counters for the future. They're not quite here yet. There's some technical issues that, quite frankly, a lot of the commuter railroads around North America struggle with there. So we still use this to get a very detailed look at how our customers use the system. Of course, this supplements our monthly reporting on ridership, which is basically derived from ticket sales. We had over 113,000 surveys returned, which was a 40% response rate. And given the comprehensive scope of this effort, we're cycled with Long Island, who was reported on in 2014. So we go on an off cycle because these are big efforts. Basically, the results of this project end up being used in capital and operations planning, tracking of long-term ridership trends, as well as it supplies information to multiple MTA and regional studies and projects, and it supports the analyses that determine how we're meeting federal requirements. So the main points, which we're happy to discuss, but are pretty interesting. One is there's really a generational change in our ridership, with Gen X and millennials now making up the bulk of our weekday commute, particularly as baby boomers retire. So in a sense, the age cohort on the train isn't changing. It's just that the generations are changing as other folks are replacing the folks who are retiring. Also, our peak period ridership continues to grow. We've discussed a lot about the reverse peak and the off peak and so forth, but our peak period, our busiest period, grows, and that really drives a lot of the capital needs of the railroad because it drives our capacity. And much of that growth has been on what we call the inner portion of our territory. So that's the closer in stations, say from White Plains on in, Stamford on in, or Croton Harmon on in. The closer suburbs are the suburbs really that are seeing that growth due to a lot of the transit-friendly development, the denser development around the stations at those locations. Another interesting point, the past rapid growth of our reverse commute appears to be leveling off. It's not growing as fast as it used to. That being said, the top 3 destinations outside of New York City are still Stamford, followed by White Plains and Greenwich. So those are our 3 busiest outside of New York destinations, if you will, for the morning commute. Last couple points. One is there's a substantial, still a growth in the discretionary travel market, and much of this are millennial customers using the railroad on weekends for entertainment purposes and so forth. And so we've seen a growth there. And another interesting point is with respect to how people get to our stations, people are reporting that they're walking more and using autos less. They have less access to autos, and we found that a very interesting point as well, which reflects kind of some of the different tastes, if you will, of different generations, as well as the greater availability of housing closer into the stations. And finally, the percent increase in ridership tends to increase at most times of the day, and it matches the service levels that have been put out there. And so that's good news when we think about the future capital program. What it shows is if we build it, they do come to ride the service. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Rhonda?
Hi. I thought this was a great and interesting report, but it struck me as strange that it was done during the fall and spring of 2015 to fall of 2017 and then was ready in December of 2019. Why would it take 2 years to give us this information?
So, as I mentioned, the time it takes to collect the data was substantial because they're serving every train in both directions. That being said, as the time went on, contractors compiled the information. We pulled together the information. We derived a variety of insights, and then, of course, over the last year or so, there were a number of other priorities, particularly our annual customer satisfaction survey, which came out with that. But we thought this would be a good time to roll out some of the details of this, and we are looking at more modern ways to gather this information. The most labor-intensive aspect of this really is the counting of people at every station on and off. And as I mentioned earlier, there are efforts to develop automatic passenger counters. We're currently in testing with that. And likewise with the survey methods, they're looking at the other methods that can really leverage modern technology for that.
Well, I wasn't really commenting on the time because I get that the time to collect the data is one thing. It's the time it took to deliver the information is what I'm asking about.
Yeah, and again, we follow the lead of our partners here at MTA headquarters, and they wanted to make sure that we had a variety of other surveys that we were layering this in. There's a program where these things are rolled out in a certain sequence. But again, that's all I can say about that from that perspective. But again, we'll work, and we are working to get more responsive surveys as we move forward.
Thank you.
Got 3 comments, one to build on Rhonda's. This survey was concluded in the fall of 2017. Rhonda was not on this board in the fall of 2017, and a lot of things happened. That's 2.25 years to process data. If it is taking 2.25 years to process data, we have a serious process problem. And that's not an insult to you, Mike. That's just a frightening stat for someone who does surveys for a living. It does not take 2.25 years to share data. That's PowerPoint and Excel, and the intraweb has helped us solve that problem. 2 comments. One, this is a great survey. It's very helpful. Page 108 that talks about the inner versus the outer station comparisons. I must say I do not like this analysis, and that is in part because I do represent one of those outer stations. The analysis is obvious to the point of actually being unhelpful when you state that the inner stations had most of the growth, because of course that's where all the people live. What I think is a more helpful way of looking at this is based on the population at the time, what has changed. So for example, Putnam County has 100,000 residents, right? Westchester has what, 750, maybe 1 million, pretty close to. Putnam County therefore is 1/10 the size with 5 stations versus Westchester's. What do you have, 40, 50 stations in Westchester and 1 million people? So on a percentage growth basis, I think it's a much more fair assessment than just sheer absolute growth, because of course, if you got 1% growth in Westchester, that's probably the same as a 10% growth in Putnam, right? But your data would never show that the Putnam growth was much, much higher on a percentage basis, and that is what matters, not the absolute change. I hope does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. So let's just make sure we do that, because otherwise, this is why I think, unfortunately, the outer counties do not get the kind of attention it deserves when we do this kind of analysis. The second thing I'd make is a minor point, but when we were having our debate about the parking issue, Commissioner Vanterpool had made a whole point about why don't people from Putnam and other more rural areas just walk to the station. And if you look at page 98, and I say this in absentia with great respect for her because she was a phenomenal commissioner and fellow board member, the data does support the fact when you look at the Hudson line, 43% of us had to drive alone and park. 43% of us. Because I'll tell you, I would love to walk to the station. I could use the exercise. but it's a 10-minute drive already for me, and I'm going like 1,500 vertical feet from my house down to the station, so I can't walk. So thank you for the data. Mike, I wish I had seen this a few months ago when Veronica was not thrilled about supporting the change in the parking fee. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's worth noting that the drive alone on the Hudson line is ahead of the driving on the other two east of Hudson lines, mainly because it's a topographically challenged area of our service territory.
And I would bet west of Hudson everybody drives.
A substantial number do drive on the west of Hudson side as well.
First of all, this is my favorite report because we actually use it to plan ahead. My concern kind of follows the lag time that the data comes to us, because the time period that we were looking at wasn't necessarily our best performing years. So as we improve our performance, as you have explained today, I think we will see additional changes that these data probably don't represent. For example, we're getting more and more TOD interest in development along all of our lines, and that will, first of all, increase walkability, but also increase ridership in all possibility. So maybe we need to think about doing it not every 10 years, but shortening it a little bit.
I think with new methods, we'll have the ability to do that and bring the costs of doing this, which was tremendously labor intensive, down substantially. It's also worth pointing out that although you're getting the report now of the summary of the survey, we've actually been leveraging aspects of the survey for a number of years. As things became available over time, and as things were made available to us through MTA and so forth over time, we use this data. For example, we use the data to factor up particularly the train ridership information at the particular stations. And we also go out pretty regularly and spot check various stations, particularly those that are seeing additional development. So I don't want there to be a perception taken away that this is the only information that we use. This is one of the tools. It offers a comprehensive look, but we use a variety of other tools, including feet on the ground, to understand what's going on in the field.
I think one of the difficulties of understanding the data density that you collect is that the summary kind of doesn't explain how much data you really have and what you've really collected. Some years ago, I saw some of the detail of this report, and I was astonished at how detailed it really is. Nonetheless, we do have the capability of mechanizing and computerizing much better than we have in the past, and I do think it's time to look at this program and see what we can do to improve it, because Long Island Railroad would be next, and I'm sure you would be happy to have some improvement in the speed of which you get your data. Yes.
Let me just say also how interesting this report is, and repeat, I guess, some of the comments before, that the delay is difficult, and I'm wondering whether or not there is some way of updating, giving us annual analysis, and we could have and spend some more time with the report, because I do think that we're giving short shrift to some very important material, and perhaps we could mark out some more time. I would, on the data collection, I would say, to Neil's point, I would suggest both raw data and percentages. One shouldn't replace the other, because both are relevant, and we ought to have both in the report.
Yes, Chairwoman, you alluded to it. When was the last time the Long Island Railroad had an origin and destination survey, and/or is one underway currently?
I think Mike mentioned the last railroad, Long Island Railroad study was 2014, and they occur roughly every 7 to 10 years. So that would be something that we would be gearing up for in the
Yeah, well, given the investments and the expansions with double track and third track and all the TODs going on throughout both Nassau and Suffolk counties, I think it would be warranted, sooner rather than later, because as you said, there are a lot of interesting nuggets in there, And the only way you could do good planning is with good research and good data.
Well, yes, you have something to add?
Yeah, just wanted to add, there are two additional data points that are worth noting, particularly for the board. One is that the two railroads do have a combined annual ridership report that's coming out in, I think it's, if it's not February, March, I believe, March or April timeframe. Which provides a lot of the detailed information on the trends that do change year to year, which are important ones that we keep in mind. And the other is the two railroads do the customer satisfaction surveys as well annually, which include a lot of the questions regarding how people access the system and so forth. And so there are more detailed information streams that do come and that we do take advantage of and report on in a more robust manner as well.
Lastly, I'd like to comment on your "if you build it, they will come." That's very good news for Penn Access and very good news for west of Hudson passing sidings and rail yard. Oh, Norm.
Yeah, well, this is my favorite report of the year, as I guess everybody else is. But for the main reason is that it's sort of a hidden function of the service planning is sort of a hidden function. It's obvious what happens with the tracks and what happens with the equipment. People know when they're in a new car. But in the end of the day, the whole purpose is to provide service, and how much service you're providing, when you're providing it, what the value that adds to the communities is only reflected really in this data rather than the other stuff. And of course, like everyone else, I'd like to see more of this, not less of this. I'd love to see this on an ongoing basis. I'd like to see your whole pile of spreadsheets. I'm sure you got, and I don't think you're really cherry picking the statistics to make it look exceptional. This is too much of a tool for what you really plan to do with the trains. Now, also though, I am curious regarding the land use equation and how you go about predicting the future service from looking at the past service, and how the availability of more properties closer to the stations affects the whole equation. Now, it occurs to me too with this 2-year time frame, which I'm not entirely upset about. I mean, you get more data the further back you are able to look. I think immediate data, maybe a less complete study on a shorter term basis might deceive you in some ways. On the other hand, I'd kind of like to see that too. But how do you go about now predicting, because it's only 2 years till they turn the switch on for East Side Access, and when they do, it will have enormous effects on Metro North service as well, particularly in the Bronx. How are you going to go about predicting where those asses in the seats are going to be sitting? I mean, who's going to be sitting where, when? You can look at the Bronx, you can see an enormous construction going up in those areas. And I see, looking at other places, in the end of the day, it's population density is a very important predictor of the railroad's overall efficiencies. So how do you go about predicting where those bodies are going to be and when they're going to be there? And, can we see more of these spreadsheets in the future?
So we have a variety of methods for travel demand forecasting, and we can get into more detail as time goes on with respect to the different forecasts that are done for different purposes. But you mentioned East Side Access and Penn Access. Those are good examples of where we understand, for example, through some of the surveys that we do undertake at a more regular rotation. For example, you try to understand origins and destinations of customers, and then how the new services will best match, for example, whether they want to go to the west side or east side of Manhattan, or if they're going to lower Manhattan and they're indifferent about which station they land at, et cetera. So there's also other ways that we use to estimate, for example, how many people are likely to come in with new developments. And so you see that there's usually a bit of a lag, but depending on the size of the units and that sort of thing, there's various formulas that you can use to calculate the number of additional customers that are likely to come based on that. And so there's a variety of different tools that are used for these purposes, and happy to come back and elaborate particularly on some of the new projects as well.
Commissioner, if I just may add, one of the advantages to the transformation that's going on is that we have and are consolidating the planning function. So there will be, while I think there was, everybody was in the past was operating in 100% good faith, but there was, because planning was going on, more of the planning was going on a property by property, agency by agency basis. Now with the consolidated planning function connected to the, hopefully effectively connected to the evaluation, the condition of assets, and the importance of those assets to service, and so on, I think we will have a more robust and a more regional approach to planning that will take into account, as you said, what's going on in the entire system rather than on individual properties alone.
Norman?
Yeah, I want to congratulate Jano for not using the word silo, which I think I've heard too often, but I think he did sort of describe a silo thinking. But let me ask Mike another thing here. The reverse commute, did the reverse commute go down in absolute terms, or is it just went down relative to the more people are coming into the city, particularly off-peak? What's the function of the reverse commute, which is one of the distinguishing characteristics of Metro North, of the Metro North silo?
So the reverse commute's not growing as fast as it used to grow. That doesn't mean it's going down. It doesn't mean that it's really a problem necessarily. It just means that it's topping off. And relative to the commute to Manhattan, of course, with Hudson Yards and a variety of other developments, continues to be the primary hub and is growing substantially and growing more substantially than some of the outer hubs. But I wouldn't say that that's an alarm bell. Reverse commute still continues to be a very important aspect of how people are traveling.
Thank you all for the lively discussion. It was interesting. Long Island Railroad information items?
Thank you. The work track, winter track program is in the book. If there's any questions, we can answer them.
Any questions on the winter track program? In that yes, Randy.
It's not a winter track, but we have all this positive information about increasing ridership. I wanted to go back to a suggestion I had made 3 years ago, which the railroad implemented. You had an agreement with the state of Maryland to borrow train sets from MARC, which was very well received by everyone and very successful. In the last 2 years, they didn't give them to us. So I ask if you are going to go back to the state and see if they'll do something about giving us those trains to run for the East End in the summertime like you did 3 years ago?
We've been in constant conversation with them over the last few years. In the last few years, they had challenges with regard to their own fleet and were unable to provide them to us, and we will be speaking with them again.
They have loaned them to other transit agencies, including SEPTA, very recently. So that answer doesn't really sit too well with me. Thank you.
Any other questions? On to procurements. Metro North has none. Long Island Railroad?
There is a procurement that was added to the agenda on Friday. An email was sent out to all board members with a copy of the staff summary, and the staff summary was left at your places this morning. That item is a competitive procurement. There are no items in the non-competitive and no items in the ratification section. The item that before you is a request for board approval to award a contract to Judlow Contracting in the amount of $65,077,333 for the design and construction of a new Elmont station, including the installation of north and south side 12-core platforms with a pedestrian overpass, including the following station elements: canopies, lighting, entranceways, stairs and ramps, automatic snow melt system, CCTV security equipment, audiovisual display, board signage, elevators, and associated machine, electrical, and communication rooms. The base work includes the design and construction of a new 8-car south platform at Elmont. The option work will include the addition of capacity to the new south platform for 4 additional cars, building a 12-car north platform, and building a pedestrian overpass connecting the south and north platforms. Please note that no award will be made until the 2015-2019 capital plan amendment is approved, which will include the funding for this contract. This item is submitted for your consideration and vote.
Question, Kevin?
Yes, very important project. It's very exciting what's happening at Belmont. Always great when private investment is investing billions of dollars in your region. But my understanding is that it was agreed that the developer would be paying for this. I understand the Long Island Railroad has to procure work that happens at its station. But what do we have in writing that that the ESD and or the developer are paying for this and not, or reimbursing us and not the MTA who is paying for this?
Right, so this is being presented with the understanding that we will not award until that document between ESD, MTA, Long Island Railroad is finalized. And that document will clarify that all of the funding will come from the state and from the private developer, and that the MTA will not be funding this project. So that's all contingent upon that. This is just a procedural to get board approval. But as Dennis said, we need the capital plan amendment to put it on the program, and then we need that MOU between agencies before any award is taking place.
Neil?
Kevin, thank you for raising that question. Is there a reason why we can't wait for that MOU and then pass this? I mean, I don't want to be caught holding the bag on $65 million.
Well, they said they weren't going to let it until, so we either trust our staff to not say what they're going to do or not, and so, but well, I'll let others answer your question, Neil.
It's a schedule, it's timing. That MOU is imminent, but we are committed to not awarding that until that MOU is finalized, because we don't have the funds, so we wouldn't be awarding it. The amendment is putting it on the program. The funds are needed by the MOU, and the money has to be transferred to us before we can award.
So somebody says procedurally.
Yes.
What is the impact of our agreeing to this now, assuming no funding comes forward? Is this then dead? What happens as a basis of that?
The timing then is that if we get the MOU and the funding in place, then we have to wait for the next board meeting. So it could be a matter of weeks or a month of delay in terms of waiting till the MOU is in place. So when the MOU and the funding is in place, if we have board approval, then we could award.
So is there a way of approving this contingent on the vote on funding?
I thought that's what we were asking.
It is contingent. It is contingent on.
Where's that language in here about that? Because I don't see anything about that.
Bill, it would also.
Impact on funding at the end.
I personally feel like we get pressured, and it's not your fault, Phil. We get pressured into lots of topics about timing, and I know this board, because we did it twice in 2019, gets together in emergency situations all the time for things to vote on, talk about, and I'm always available, as is I know all our colleagues. But B, if you want to do contingency, I want something very explicit that says this is a contingent vote, just because I hear you. No one here wants to slow down this massive project, but at the same point, this is not the first time we've had one of these presented to us like this.
Then I ask that contingency be made clear in the Long Island Railroad minutes, and I also ask that Phil tell us when the MOU is complete and the funding is available, so that we get a follow-up report. Okay? Is there a motion? Randy? Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on to construction and development. You have a.
Yes, we have one item. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Construction and Development has one procurement item for consideration this month. The item is competitive and begins on page 119 of your committee book. The item requests approval to award a publicly advertised and solicited personal service contract to FX Collaborative WSP joint venture for the development of a master plan for Penn Station. The contract consists of a base scope of services and an option which can be exercised at the MTA's sole discretion. The total value of the contract, including the option, is $9,487,651. Under this contract, the consultant will perform an in-depth functional and operational assessment of the existing conditions of Penn Station, along with analyzing projects either underway or in the planning stage. These projects include the Moynihan Train Hall, the new Long Island Railroad entrance at 33rd Street and 7th Avenue, the transformation of the LIRR concourse, and the proposed addition of 8 new tracks under a new Penn Station South terminal. The ultimate goal is to ensure coordination among all of these projects to avoid duplication of effort, conflicts, inconsistencies, inefficiencies, and to coordinate the redevelopment of the existing space of Penn Station and the new additional projects to ensure that that Penn Station is transformed into a world-class facility for all of its users. The option scope consists of the development of the plan through a transparent planning process. The cost of the contract will be equally shared among the MTA, Amtrak, and New Jersey Transit, subject to a cost-sharing agreement. This item is submitted for your consideration and vote.
Question, Kevin.
Yes, thank you. I have like a global type of concern. Why are we going to spend $10 million on a plan? All these plans have already been announced, and some of them are already under construction. So I don't understand the need, for a master plan when Moynihan's underway, the Long Island Railroad entrance is underway. The governor just announced the exciting new project of 8 new tracks, at Penn. So is it really a master plan, or is it more of a implementation and execution plan to avoid issues? Because when I hear the word master plan, it sort of sounds like, well, there's a lot of projects already underway, and usually you have a master plan first, and then you design the projects or go forward with the projects.
Apologies if the communication wasn't clear. The whole point of this is to accelerate and figure out the specifics on how do we execute on exactly what you said, which is to take existing Penn Station. There's a project underway to widen the Long Island Railroad concourse, to add a new entrance at 7th Avenue. But now the genesis of this was the reality that Amtrak is moving out of the Amtrak level, and the question arose, what happens to the Amtrak level? So the first level of this planning is to figure out how to integrate the Amtrak level and the areas that Amtrak is leaving when they decamp from Moynihan, and to turn them into a more integrated Penn Station that works both for the Long Island Railroad commuter and the new Metro-North commuters, as well as for New Jersey Transit. So that was the genesis of this, how to create a truly integrated and better version of Penn Station post-Moynihan opening. Then when the vision of the additional 8 tracks in so-called Penn South area, Block 780, was unveiled by the governor, this effort will now include that as well. So it will include the planning and the preliminary design work necessary to explain how do you connect the new expanded Penn Station, existing Penn, to the new Block 780 8-track expansion as well. So there's a lot of technical work that needs to go on to make real these visions that the governor and others have set in motion, and that's what this is about. The good news, I think the good news is we had underway a cooperative process with Amtrak and NJT before the 780 block vision was unveiled. Now this is just growing to encompass that as well.
That was helpful, Jano, and again, I support and I'm excited about all the different components of what's going to be happening in the Penn Station area. So perhaps rather than a master plan, this really should be called an integration and a coordination or implementation plan.
Fair point.
Neil?
So, first of all, Kevin, thank you for raising that. I think that's a very thoughtful point. Second, I do want to applaud the governor. This is just yet another example of this incredible leadership he has. The Politico had a piece this morning by Dana Rubenstein about the new master builder, and it is not the mayor of this city, it is the governor of this state, and it's extraordinary to see this, and I'm thrilled about it. One issue, though, which I've raised via email, my vote is contingent for this action on that Hudson Line access to Penn Station is part of the design. If that is not part of the scope of work for this master plan, then I am not going to vote for it.
I guess you're not going to vote for it because honestly, there's no purpose to exclude that. That has been talked about. You've raised it. But the railroad planning work that you're talking about, which is the expansion of the Amtrak Empire Line on the west side and the connections in the Bronx and so on, that is very much, that would be enabled by the planning work to have Block 780, but the actual railroad connection has not been included in the scope, and it was not anticipated to be part of this initial effort, which is really focused on the physical station. So I take your point, but as of now, that has not been included.
It is a master plan. This is not a minor plan. This is not a partial plan. This says the master plan for Penn Station. Therefore, it seems like it is the most overarching commentary that will be written. $10 million is not an insignificant consulting project. I know last time I thought about a master plan, I recall September 11th and the World Trade Center area where we had a massive redesign of the entire area. Roads, buildings, mass transit. You were obviously involved in that in many ways. So to have a master plan where a portion of a access is not conceived and designed into it seems like a major omission to me.
Yes.
So let me just also state my appreciation for Kevin's point. I think that many of the things I've seen is sort of a reversal of the normal process, where ordinarily one would come up with what is the vision, and then the pieces would fall into that. Instead, I've been seeing in the 6 months I've been here, ideas come forward and then they're incorporated in the vision. I mean, here the discussion of the 8 tracks is already in this language. We just all heard about that. It seems to me that it would be good, I think from a planning point of view, that if a project like this were considered, now I'm all for the projects and I'm all for moving forward on this consulting project, but it does seem to me that it is a reversal of the ordinary course. Which is you look at the elements in front of you, you see what makes sense, you see how it places together, and then you develop the pieces from that. As opposed to, here are all a series of projects that are already in place, now let's figure out how to put them together. Not your usual planning process.
Additional, Norman has a comment.
Yeah, well, your same standard should apply here, applied with the Metro North. You know, you got a new transformation process, you got a new planning group. They should be, you know, viewing the entire Megillah.
Randy?
I second Neil's point about including the Hudson Line into these new tracks, and I'm sure that the staff could give us some kind of an update on that. Are we going to ask for them to tell us what the planning is?
Are you doing any planning from the perspective of getting the Hudson Line into Penn Station? I mean, allowing Metro North to do that? This is kind of a joint item between Metro North and construction and development, and this is an example of some of the changes that we're going to have to go through to get accustomed to our new organization. But I really think that Kathy is the one who has to answer this because...
Yeah, I mean, my understanding as part of the capital program approval process was that there was an understanding that the consolidated planning function would look at the issue in terms of sort of, my understanding is Frederica is undertaking sort of an overall network study, and that the Hudson Line access into Penn would be incorporated into that review that she is undertaking with respect to prioritization of investments in upcoming capital programs. And I think that that was communicated to Commissioner Zuckerman.
I think you've answered the question. Yeah.
I have a question then. What Kathy described is my understanding, that we are going forward with an evaluation. It seems to me that the discrepancy here is the station itself and the expansion of that station versus the tracks that go into the station. And I agree with Neil, but I would vote for this if those are truncated for a reason.
Look, I think the genesis of this is that we wanted to make absolutely clear, I think it goes back to what Commissioner Law said, which is that we don't have, a lot of time. Amtrak's going to be moving out in a year of existing Penn. So we wanted to get all of the players who are involved in that decision of how that space ought to be transformed to participate in a joint exercise. That's really what developed, led to this study, and it's been adjusted to incorporate the physical planning of the station, and you're right to draw a distinction, the physical planning of the station to make sure that we weren't doing anything to cut off the opportunity to expand into Block 780. There are a lot of planning efforts that are external to the physical station that need to take place to answer all the questions. Everybody knows about Gateway. Certainly, we're responsible for the work that you've described with respect to the Hudson Line, but this was limited to station planning for the physical Penn, the Penn Station as it exists today and how it might be expanded to the south.
Then I make a request and an observation. I think it would be useful to have Metro North represented in order to at least explain strategy that might be needed in order to get the Hudson Line into Penn Station. And secondly, this is a very short contract with a great deal of work in it. And I understand that we need to get it done in a year because Amtrak's gone in a year, but I think it's a challenge. Kevin?
Yeah, no, good points. And yeah, I'm excited about all the things that happen in there, Neil. And as you said, none of these projects would be, going forward without the leadership of the governor. And so I think we need to get behind it. And Neil, I want you to vote for this. And I commit to work with you on addressing your concerns as we move forward. But I think we should let this, agreement go forward to get the work underway. And I think Long Island Railroad folks should be supportive of Metro North folks to address the concerns that you raised as we go forward as either part of this planning process or a subsequent planning process.
This is not a spiritual question, Kevin. I'm supportive of, as I've said many times, it's one system, and I have voted over and over again before you, since and before you joined this board for Long Island Railroad projects. The weight of the number of Long Island Railroad projects, it takes up the bulk of our funding. You know that. I am totally supportive of them because it's one system, and also because I have a little place in the South Shore of Long Island too. But I have not seen, so it's not a spiritual discussion, this is a specific discussion. I have not seen the specific RFP, and I'm saying that if we're going to do a master plan, we should, for $10 million over the course of 6 months, which is not a cheap project, not a cheap consulting project at all, the addition of one other major piece of work that we have been talking about should be part of this effort. That's all I'm saying. And that's not I'm not standing in opposition at all to the program. I applauded when the governor said it, and I still applaud it. But I'm suggesting we are one system. We approved in the capital plan for 2020-2024 a study of the Hudson Line to get into Penn Station. We might as well, if we're going to have a master plan, see it on the page. Because my big worry, Kevin, is we do this work, and it's not about you. It's about the work being done by, what's this firm called? FXC, WSP. When they're sitting in the bowels of cranking on their analysis and they don't have it as part of one of their items to do, they're not going to do it. And so I want to see it in here because it is a part of the future of this organization. Kathy reported early on, the fastest growing line we have in Metro North is the Hudson line. The river towns were once maudlin and sad and now are growing and are vibrant now. And the CEO of my firm lives in Hastings. You live in Irvington. It is an extraordinary area. You care about it. I care about it. I live in the Hudson too. And I think it should be part of our master plan. Master plan is what I'm hearing.
Jana, how big of a deal would it be to expand the scope of what's proposed to us today to include what Neil is suggesting? And/or if we approve this today, could you come back with that modification and we could approve the inclusion of the West Hudson that Neil raised, as part of this at perhaps the next meeting?
Look, I'll do whatever the board wants because we have to get this, that's necessary to get this work going. Here are the issues that I would highlight for you. One, the scope of what you're describing to address all of the railroad infrastructure issues are significant and complex, and I do think that they do bear, there was a Metro North study underway. They do bear the time and the focus. Neil, you both of you are right. The time, I think it was Dr. Metzger said, the time to do this is challenging. What I would suggest is, if it was acceptable to the board, to frame the question so we didn't have an additional scope that would require renegotiation of the contract with the contractor, to frame the question so that part of the assumption is a not to preclude addressing the Hudson line's access, and then to continue on the track that Kathy set to analyze all the railroad infrastructure issues, because they're really separate from the station planning issues. They're large, and I'm just not sure whether this consultant, who is a planning consultant, not a railroad infrastructure expert, is the right consultant to do that work.
So then, Jano, you're raising another topic, or a related topic, which would help me vote on this, and I may propose. I think it would be useful for us to actually see the scope of work, because you keep describing it as a building issue, it sounds like, as opposed to a railroad issue. And so I just would like to understand that, because you're making a distinction between the trains that run through and the lines versus it sounds like the physical buildings that sit atop. So maybe, because I'm going to guess many of my colleagues are not understanding the distinction from the RFP, so maybe we can look at it first. I'm not ready to vote on this, or I'm going to vote no, because that is I'm not comfortable with it. And that doesn't mean you can call for the vote if you'd like, but at this point, I either going to have to abstain or vote no at this point.
But Neil, that goes to the issue that I was raising before. Let's not get lost on the nomenclature here. It's not really a master plan. It said a master plan here, but it's more of an integration plan to integrate all these neat projects that are happening there at Penn. And as Jana just said, we're not going to do anything to preclude opportunities for West Hudson.
I don't think he's saying it's not about the rail. This is where he's saying it's not about the rail lines. It's about what's the term you used, Jano?
Listen, I'm happy to circulate the scope of work. There's no reason why, however the committee elects to handle this item, that the members can't look at it, and we can't have further dialogue between now and Wednesday. So I'm happy to circulate it. But the scope of work really is focused on, as I said, the building, the existing Penn Station block, the Block 780 block, the circulation, the pedestrian and customer circulation, both within and outside the stations, rather than the railroad infrastructure at the track level. So, but I'm happy to have everybody look at it, and then and if it's acceptable to the chairs to come to some conclusion that addresses Commissioner Zuckerman's concern.
Well, Chairman Metzger, Chairwoman Metzger, apologies. Maybe we should also then ask for a much better writing of this piece, because if it's the way it's written now, my interpretation seems very reasonable. If it's rewritten based on what Jano is saying, which is about buildings and how the block is structured and not the rail lines, then maybe my concerns are alleviated. Although I would imagine that we'd like a little sign with an entrance that says Hudson Line entrance somewhere.
Madam Chairwoman and Neil, if you, why don't we recommend this to the board without recommendation, let it out of the committee without recommendation, and you have today and tomorrow for Jano to get you some additional information, and maybe by Wednesday we're more comfortable with approving this. Would that be okay?
And I will talk to Kathy and see how we potentially align the two scopes of work as well.
I do think that part of the issue is a misnomer. It's really not a master plan. And when you see that, you expect to be able to accommodate this request. I don't wish to hold this up, so we will move it to the full board without recommendation. Thank you, and you will get the scope to us, and maybe some wordsmithing.
Always do my best.
I think we have information, or we have monthly reports.
Sure. So the monthly reports on Metro North's operations, performance metrics, finance, ridership, and capital program are included in the committee agenda book. And we're available to answer any questions that you might have on any of these reports. And then just back on O&D for a second, we're also happy to set up any kind of a separate briefing that you would like, both with respect to the results, to delve into those a little bit more, as well as the process, because I'm mindful of your concerns with respect to the 2-year lag. So anything that we can do to elaborate on that, I'm happy to set that up separately if you would like. In addition, related to the Metro North financial report, I want to highlight the year-to-date performance with respect to operating deficit or loss. Based on preliminary results through the end of December, Metro North generated $1.1 billion in revenue and spent $1.6 billion, resulting in a net operating loss of, get my glasses on, $526 million.
Any questions for Kathy?
Okay, a little bit more. Lower than expected revenues, mainly reimbursable project receipts, are partially offset by lower than expected expenditures, and the net operating loss through December is higher than what was assumed in both the adopted budget and the year-end forecast. These values are preliminary, and we will provide an update of audited 2019 results when they are finalized.
Questions? And I also want to know if you're interested in taking Kathy up on her suggestion.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to say, that I am interested.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. I think it would be a very interesting meeting.
Thank you. Phil?
Thank you. Yes, the Long Island Railroad Operations Report, Performance Metric Reports, Ridership Report, Capital Program Report are in the book. With regards to the finance report, also in the book, based on preliminary results through the end of December, the Long Island Railroad had generated $1.3 billion in revenue and spent $2 billion, resulting in a net operating loss of $708 million. But due to higher than expected revenues, partially offset by higher than expected expenditures, this net operating loss through December is lower than what was assumed in the final estimate.
Questions of Phil? Hearing none, are there other issues to be brought before the committee? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Second. Those in favor? Thank you all.